Left and right. Okay, thank you. Guys, pleasure to be here. My name is Ran, and I don't get out much, and that's why I dress this way. So apparently it's more of a casual situation here, so I apologize. So Ghassan, you got it right. Don't let your wife tell you otherwise. And I also don't do presentations very much. So this is something I put together last minute, and I'll probably won't follow it even. So please bear with me. Here we go. Mama Earth, what do we do? Basically, we connect you to the best local farms and artisans in Ontario. Been around since 2008. We basically aggregate what these amazing farmers and producers make, bring it to our warehouse at East York and deliver it to your home. We do about 5,000 deliveries per week. We are obsessed with minimizing packaging, so we use so-called circular packaging, which is basically plastic bins that we deliver to you and then we take back afterwards. Super carbon efficient delivery mechanism because our routes are very efficient, and now we're electrifying our fleet as well. So really trying to make it easier for you to essentially shop at a farmer's market. Why are we doing all this? Now, there's many problems with our food system, but I can find only 4 icons to represent it, so that's what I'm going to focus on. Basically, our food system uses a lot of energy, so a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, anywhere between 15 to 30% of greenhouse gas emissions are related to food and agriculture. Little known fact, about half of the Earth's land, habitable land, is used for farming and food production, whether it's crops or for livestock. So farmers are effectively stewards of half of the Earth's habitable surface. We're spraying a lot of chemicals, herbicides, pesticides that are having huge effects on our plant life, animal life, and as well as our own life. There's measurable differences in IQ because of glyphosate, for example. And certainly the closer you are to these farms, the worse the outcomes are. You guys know all about fast food and all the unhealthy food we're having. So we're in the midst of epidemics in diabetes, obesity, hypertension, and all that means for both of our lifespan, but even arguably more importantly, our health span. So we have less and less kind of productive years of life because of what we're eating. And a lot of unfair labor. And that stretches from the farm, how migrant laborers are treated in developed countries, to how labor is treated in developing countries, all the way to how processors in Canada and retailers pay their staff as well. And so essentially Mama Earth is attempting to create an alternative food system that is kinder and more just. As I was thinking about what to talk about today, I wasn't quite sure, to be honest. Usually I talk about the food system and how we're trying to address these issues, and I tell them my story. And with this audience, it's a bit different, so I was kind of brainstorming. So this is a bit of what you can ask me during the Q&A, and I'm not going to talk about this, but it's been a very kind of long and winding and interesting and fulfilling and heartbreaking journey for me as an entrepreneur. And so talk a bit about the transition from professional life, from working on a 20th floor Midtown Manhattan tower, to starting an urban farm, to consolidating this little online grocery, fresh grocery market in Southern Ontario, to the ins and outs of omni-channel, the ins and outs of vertical integration. So again, happy to talk about any of that, either Q&A or feel free to follow up, and I'll share our successes and our failures. But what I wanted to talk a bit about more is this, because I think in the recesses of all of our entrepreneurial minds is something to this effect, right? The hockey stick graph, the top right there is where we're all going. This is where we're striving to go to. And that's kind of success. That's what we think of it. And if you think of us as, if you think of entrepreneurship as getting on a plane, we get on the plane and we say the top right is like Bali. We all want to go to Bali. It's a great place to be. But the reality of it is, some of us will just get stuck on the tarmac. The plane won't even take off. Some of us will take off and end up crash landing. Some of us will take off and end up landing in Hamilton rather than Bali. And some of us will actually end up in Bali, but it'll take you a lot longer than you thought. Will be one of those, Malaysian planes that keep flying, and you don't know when you'll get there. So I think the big thing I kind of want to talk a bit about today was the why. So that top right-hand corner where we're trying to get to. As a social entrepreneur, I would greatly encourage you to try to tackle one of the world's to-do list problems. We've all heard about the various problems we have as humanity. And I would encourage you, to whatever you're doing, to try to tackle some piece of that problem, because that makes it more meaningful and it makes it more, enriching along the way. I think being of service to humanity, or at least trying to be of service to humanity, is an end in itself. So I would definitely, kind of, as you're thinking about your business and how you're going to run it, think about what it is you're ultimately trying to achieve, the why, because that makes it easier to keep going and more fulfilling if you get there. But the piece I want to spend a bit more time talking about is actually the x-axis, because it might take you longer than you expect to get to where you're getting. And I think a lot of us on the entrepreneurial journey have not been intentional enough about thinking about the trade-offs that this is going to cause for us personally. So for me personally, our business was on life support about 1.5 years ago. So I was kind of on that plane. There was turbulence. We were about to crash land. So I had these thoughts, okay, what happens if this thing dies? I've just spent 12, 13 years of my life doing this. This thing could just go kaput, the whole thing. Forget just me, like no job for the staff, no food for our many customers, no supply, buyers for a lot of the produce and other food that we buy from small and medium-sized farmers. So I really kind of thought about my journey and reflected what it meant. And the one thing I realized that I did fairly well, but not as well as I'd like to do, I'd like to have done, and I encourage each of you to think about, is to be very intentional about the trade-offs you're making. To say to yourself, so for example, in my case, one red line was I was never going to personally guarantee put my house on the line to finance the business, and I was really happy about that when we were in this intense restructuring mode. And I have 3 kids, and you know what? I wasn't not a 10 out of 10 father, but I think I'm an 8 or a 9. I mean, I think they'd probably attest to that. I really spent a lot of time with my kids, dinners, walk them to school, be there for their recitals, their soccer games, etc. But there's also a lot of stuff I didn't do. I've let a lot of my friendships wither. I let my health wither, my personal health wither. And some of those trade-offs I'm at peace with. It was not necessarily in a perfect world the trade-offs I'd like to make. And some of them I'm not. So what I would encourage you is to not pretend like there's no trade-offs, like realize there are trade-offs, and be very, very intentional about which ones you're willing to make. Because if you don't do it ahead of time, and if you don't do it in real time and keep on checking with yourself and your loved ones, stuff can blow up in your face. And you can sit there after 10 years of running a business that maybe even succeeded, but even businesses that succeeded often do so at a great personal cost to the founders. So I think just very, very carefully and very intentionally, and don't pretend like there isn't a trade-off. I think there's always a trade-off. It's very, very hard to breathe life into a business, and you need to be very careful about the trade-offs you're making. So with all that said, I'll open the floor to any questions you might have.
Let's give it up for Rand, everybody. That was great. Powerful. We've got a lot of folks here kind of early on in their journey, early to mid, and I'm wondering, you're 14, 15 years into the game now. Is there anything that you kind of look back on and you're like, wow, if there was kind of this one, piece of advice, or like this one thing, if someone kind of would have shaken me? You've kind of touched on it, but is there anything else that comes to mind for the folks?
To me, I think the biggest thing is to be the thing. be the thing that you are trying to be. And I remember especially for me, I was a hedge fund lawyer for 5 years in New York, and there's a lot of status attached to that, et cetera. So it took me some time to transition from like I'm a hedge fund lawyer to like I'm an urban farmer. I'm in grocery. I'm trying to grow sell food and tomatoes and carrots and shit and stuff. Sorry, and stuff. You can take that piece out. So I would say like really take it on. Like go all in. Be intentional, but go all in, because then you kind of know if it's going to work, it's going to work. It's not going to work, it's not going to work. But don't like just think of this as like a separate identity. Like for a business to succeed, you need to be the business.
Love that. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to the crowd for questions.
Hi, Ron. Thank you very much for sharing your story and for being vulnerable, because you also shared some personal about your health that you had to sacrifice. My question, actually I have two questions and you choose which one you like. The first one, before you go all in, did you make any research? Did you have any data that this is going to work? Like, what made you jump in? And the second question, it is when you started your business or throughout those years, did you have some things that you hated but you either had to learn to do them, relate to your business, or you gave up, or you delegated that?
Sure.
Thank you.
To the first question, I did do some research, but not enough. And I think most entrepreneurs would probably say that if you had known what you know now, you probably wouldn't have started in the first place. So I think there's definitely some truth to that. So for example, my business, we started as an urban farm, and we quickly pivoted and evolved into being an online grocer, like a D2C play. So I certainly, whatever research I did was not enough, that's for sure. So that's like to the first question. And your second question?
Yeah, what were some things that you didn't like?
That I didn't like, that's right. So one thing I really hated early on was doing customer service. I took it very personally because, as you can imagine, in produce, you're not going to make people happy. That imperfect tomato, et cetera, especially back then, our quality control processes weren't that good. So it would just really hurt to just get somebody, you worked so hard, and we were farming at the time, so actually growing the food, and just to get what was kind of heartbreaking. So and even to this day, by the way, like I get our customer service reports, once a week. So I'm like, I kind of steel myself. I'm like, okay. But like, if I got that at real time, I would be pretty depressed. So.
That's great. We're going to take another question from the crowd right here.
Hi, I'm Shafkat. I work at Shopify. Do you still do retail? And if not, why? I know retail is really hard and challenging for people who do online businesses. So if you still do, why? And if you don't, why not?
So we no longer do we do retail in the sense of where we deliver, but we don't do any bricks and mortar retail. We basically had a 5-year pilot, if you want to call it, or chapter in retail. And what we basically found was it really had a lot of beneficial impacts in terms of brand building and also getting customers more loyal. The customers who are actually close to the stores were actually some of our best customers. So they shop both online and in store. So there was that great dynamic there. But it was just a whole other ballgame, especially with a fresh product like ours, to try to match supply and demand, to have the right kind of leadership in store. At a small format, you have only 2 people in store. Suddenly people are sick. I mean, during COVID, forget about it. It was a lot of work for what it was worth to us ultimately. So we ended up retrenching and just doing online. But I'm still a big believer that there is a lot of potential in omni-channel, but it's very hard for us to do. As a pure play online, to go into bricks and mortar, I think is harder than bricks and mortar going into online, in our context at least.
One more question, guys.
Hey, my name's Azim, also an LSE alumni, so it's cool that you're here. In your remarks earlier, you talk about labor and the developing world. Do you think there's a way to do what you're doing and scaling it up to the developing world to bridge that social justice piece that's so close to your heart?
So we do that in a limited way, in the sense that wherever possible, we buy fair trade. So for bananas and avocados and chocolate and coffee, where there is already like an established market, we're not large enough, and that's kind of one of my dreams, to be large enough that we can actually have direct relationship with farmers ourselves and really help support cooperatives, et cetera, in developing countries. So I do think it's possible, but at our scale, like we've tried a couple of times to do some direct importing, and the volume, like we're just not there. But I'm very kind of one of my big critiques is of the existing kind of national grocers, huge players, and I don't think they do enough to support that, because they certainly have the volume to do that.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Ran.